Well, hi, welcome back. It's been a while since I made a video. I really wanted to try to do better at that, but that wasn't, I guess that hadn't worked out. Got kind of turned off from doing anything on social media for a while. Don't know, just a lot of very, very discouraging things. It's really hard to see all these people that like not seemingly to be very consistent in their political ideology. I mean, like saw a lot of people going like, I know this is what the response is gonna be, and then that's the response, and know that they were going to shift the goalpost, and they shift the goalpost, and it's wild to me just to see how quickly people will be like, oh, I defend this issue, but then as soon as Trump or basically the MAGA party or the Republican Party come out and speak against that particular topic, they do a complete 180 and go, oh, I don't support that anymore, and act like they never did, even though they did before. And that's very bizarre to me. I tend to try to stay consistent to my values and principles. I have changed things over the years, like I did anti-SJW content, admittedly not knowing that I was making right-wing propaganda against my own values and principles. I had been brainwashed. What can I say? So the content that I've been producing more of late is actually more indicative of the real me and how I truly feel about things, and positions that I've held for a very, very long time, going back even to my teenage years when I first started getting an idea of social political issues. This one, like I was thinking there's this video that I wanted to make about this really stupid girl that commented on a goth video that I made. I definitely want to make that video, but I can obviously make no promises, because it seems that when I try to make promises, some crap happens and I end up not getting around to making videos at all. Pain management is a very big issue in this, and being able to make content or videos or not. And the more time I have, the more pain relief I have, the more detailed the videos can be. So this is going to be very, very simple. This is going to be about Jubilee and how I hate Jubilee. I don't like Jubilee. Don't like it. I always knew that there was something that was just always kind of off about Jubilee to me. And a lot of other people have started to really pick up on that as of late with this whole Mehdi Hassan thing that came out. But there's been other issues, like, there was a content creator that pointed this out, and I absolutely agree, and I could have said this a long time ago and didn't, but because I didn't, that content creator, wish I remembered the name of the channel and the name of that person, wish I would have saved the video, and I could have linked it below and everything, but I didn't, and I don't remember the name of that person. It's not somebody I'm subscribed to, but I absolutely agree with this. And something I've actually commented privately about Jubilee before is, you have things like middle ground. And so what happens in middle ground when you have somebody like a group of scientists on there and a group of flat earthers on there? So what's the middle ground between, a bunch of scientists that are bringing a bunch of facts to the table and a bunch of conspiracy theorists that are bringing a bunch of, falsehoods to the table? Is there a middle ground between falsehoods and fact? That's something that needs to be considered. Why are they platforming these types of people? Why are they even implying or suggesting that there's a middle ground between there being a flat earth, which is just a falsehood, a conspiracy theory, just bullshit, and scientists that are bringing to the notion that a scientist would capitulate to the idea that the earth is flat is so dumb and just so antithetical to everything we know in science, geology, astronomy, pretty much every aspect of science. It's, like if you saw scientists like come out and be like, oh, the world is flat, that's kind of a cause to be like, I want to look for a sound bite of the AOL dial-up day sound, hopefully it'll be there. If not, then you'll just have a screenshot of me looking funny for a second. So the problem is that there really is no middle ground there. There's no middle ground between a falsehood and just substantiated fact. So then you get into this Mehdi Hasan thing, and the issue is like the fascism thing. And it is getting to a point where it's like, I'm starting to understand why people don't want to platform fascists anymore. And the fascists will decry that is some form of censorship. And here's the thing is, like, nobody's censoring you. If you want to go on main stage, like, the thing, you have to abide by the user terms service agreement of these platforms, of YouTube, and I don't know how many, there's Rumble, there's Twitch, there's BitChute and Gab and all these social media platforms, which, you go to the right-wing ones and then yeah, you can say those things. But here's the thing. So, like, removing the social media platform is not a town square. It is a social media platform. You could absolutely go into where I live, the center of the city, like sort of a main area with a bullhorn, and you could talk about how much you hate a particular marginalized group of people, and you can use all the pejoratives that you want. You can do that. You can absolutely do that. Absolutely. And nobody's going to arrest you. Nobody's going to fine you. The problem is with the fascist rhetoric is they're not asking for free speech per se. They're not asking for freedom per se. What they are asking for is the freedom and ability to oppress others. Because when it comes down to it, they don't care about free speech. They want to censor anything oriented around LGBTQIA plus voices and issues. They want to censor anything related to sexual content, sexual education. Nope. Censor. They want to censor anti-religious talk, seculars talk, atheism talk, skepticism, nihilism. They want to censor those things. Not acceptable, particularly amongst the religious far-right extremists. So they're not interested in they're not interested in free speech. They just decry what's interesting. They decry censorship, because the thing is while you have that ability to go and talk about a marginalized group of community the way that they want to do, there's no legal recourse for it. But what they're calling censorship is basically the thing is people who have an aversion to that, they also have the freedom of speech to speak out against the bigotry that they talk about. And that's the thing that they would like the privilege of having, is to be able to say hateful rhetoric against marginalized groups of people and use pejorative language. But what they don't want is the social recourse of people using their free speech to say, I find you to be a disgusting human being that's bigoted and hateful, and fuck you for it. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of those people do want them to stop saying it, but from a legal standpoint, you do have the freedom to do it. And from my perspective, they do this. It shows us who they are, and there are consequences for that within society. You know, a company can absolutely make the decision that they don't want people who carry that type of ideology. Now, here's the thing. They might argue, well, we should be able to discriminate then against LGBTQIA plus people, against people of color, against women, blah, 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 blah. Well, those are groups of people. What's being talked about here is specifically in relation to an ideological framework that is extremely harmful, often leading to incitement to violence of particular groups of people. I mean, that's kind of what authoritarian fascism leads to, is the suppression, oppression, and even violence towards specific scapegoated, marginalized groups of people. So, do you have the right to incitement to violence? I don't know about that. There are aspects within, there are exceptions to free speech where there are particular frameworks of incitement to violence that are not allowed. And there's even things where maybe it's not a crime in the sense that you get arrested, but there are senses of lawsuits like libel and slander. Maybe they don't spend jail time or prison time, but if somebody commits libel or slander on you, you can absolutely take them to court and sue them for that. 100%. That's within the legal framework of the United States. I would say that is asking for privilege. So they want to be able to come out and use pejorative words and speak out against the marginalized groups that they hate without people being able to basically protest them and say, like, this is horrible, this is nasty, this is disgusting. I wish they wouldn't say it. I know that they have the right to say it, but free speech goes both ways. So while you can stand in the center of this city at a fountain, I've never said exactly where I live, but, you know, with a bullhorn and say those things, police won't arrest you. You won't get fined. No, because you have the freedom of speech. But likewise, people who are against that rhetoric have the free speech to protest you. And that's nothing new. Actually, that was something I pointed out to this stupid little goth girl, is she was saying that goth did not come from punk, that it was part of post-punk, which is halfway true. There is a post-punk goth aspect. That is a thing. Punk or goth absolutely sprung out of the punk movement, though, 100%. And some of the originators of gothic rock didn't even originally consider themselves goth. They considered themselves to be dark punk. Now, when I say dark punk, I don't mean like heavy. I mean dark, like Eva O. I should save that for the video on that girl. So anyway, the Jubilee is bringing, you know, these far right fascists, but the thing is like, we can't sit down like a leftist, and I can sit down with as a leftist with somebody who is conservative, Republican, libertarian, right wing, and talk about, like, okay, we both, like, I can agree we need to deport criminals. The conversation therein would lie how that's done. What we should not be agreeing to disagree on is the overturning of due process. Everyone should be afforded due process. Without due process, without the assumption of innocence until proven guilty, without representation, without the opportunity to say, hold on, you made a mistake. I'm not an illegal immigrant. I'm here legally. I have papers. I have proof. I have evidence. Without that, you have a broken judicial system. And when you have a broken judicial system, one that isn't functioning, one without adjudication, one in which guilt is assumed over innocence, and because guilt is presumed over innocence, all it takes is the accusation of guilt alone, and one is guilty. That's it. That's basically like a witch trial. How do you prove a negative? How does one prove that one is not in a gang? Not prove that you are in a gang, in a mafia. How do you prove you are not? It's like asking somebody to prove that there are no unicorns or leprechauns. How do you prove the absence of a thing other than the absence of that thing itself? You cannot prove a negative. This is why we have due process. We learned our stupid little lesson from the stupid little witch trials that stupidly should have never stupidly happened. But they did. We went, well, this is a bastardized sort of sense of justice system. We need to reform this, and we're using due process and adjudication. And the idea that somebody is innocent until proven guilty, which guilt is proven with evidence. Substantiated evidence. Detective work, a lot of detective work, oddly, uses a lot of logic and critical thinking skills, deductive reasoning. You let the evidence lead you to the conclusion. You do not start with a conclusion and look for evidence that supports that conclusion. That is called confirmation bias, which is kind of what they're doing. Oh, they have tattoos, they're brown, they must be in a gang. And you end up, deporting a gay hairdresser that is in no way affiliated with a gang at all, and put somebody who's essentially innocent and committed no crimes, and for all you know, we're here completely illegal, but no due process. How do we prove that? To CCOT, where I'm sure they were brutally and horribly treated, especially being a very young gay man in that place, I believe 20 years old. Gay people, gay men are not particularly treated very well in prisons, especially a prison like that. Maybe not necessarily always by the inmates, sometimes by the inmates, but you're talking about, that country, the guards, no. And Abreu Garcia comes back and even admits to being literally tortured and doing things that, are essentially war crimes, international war crimes. Forcing people to stand up for, 2 days straight, never turning the lights off. These are forms of torture. Keeping it at a very specific low-grade temperature on purpose. These are absolutely recognized forms of torture that we have used on members of Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups. Terrorist groups. We did this to somebody that we just assumed was guilty of being an illegal immigrant and wasn't. That's pretty wild. And this is not what we would do to our own prisoners here in the United States, even convicted of some of the worst crimes like pedophilia and murder and rape. We don't even do that. So not even people on death row are treated this way. And I don't know why we would do such a thing. We need to keep due process. So I don't know how we can agree to disagree on that. Due process is very important. It's something that is guaranteed to even people who come and visit America as a tourist from other Western nations, which is granted to us in return when we visit European countries. Now, dictatorships, they do not grant you that you will get due process or adjudication. Like if you are an American citizen and you visit North Korea, Russia, China, you're not necessarily guaranteed due process and adjudication or representation of any kind, or a fair kind of jury, or proceeding judicially. They'll just bust in your door, arrest you, and throw you in a cell, and somebody's going to decide if you're guilty or not. Usually, Western nations, first world nations, democracies, democratic nations step in and pull that person out as a citizen and say, no, you're not doing that. So I don't know how we can agree to disagree on that. That's erosion of the three powers of government. It's erosion of the Constitution. It's erosion of the dream of the Founding Fathers. It is outside the scope of what is American politics. And not something I would support because I am anti-authoritarian, and doing overriding due process and adjudication is something that dictators do, authoritarians, tyrants. And that is not something that I support. I don't care if it's a leftist dictatorship. I don't care if it's a right-wing dictatorship. I do not support dictatorships. I am a far left, anti-authoritarian leftist, really kind of a dying breed. So Jubilee brings on these fascists, and the thing is it's supposed to be within the framework of a constitutional representative democracy. Most people on the left just call it democracy, and people on the right call it a republic. We all know what we're talking about. It's supposed to be in the framework of like, okay, let's talk about immigration, migrant status, deportations. Yes, we both agree. Pretty much everyone agrees that people who are here criminally or have committed criminal acts should definitely be deported. There are other things that, on how it's done, we might disagree on, or the process of seeking asylum or seeking citizenship we might disagree on, but might agree that there should be some kind of process there. Not with a fascist. They're not even there to... They are there to discuss the complete dismantling of democracy, of democratic political structures, including a constitutional representative democracy, a republic. Because ultimately what they want is to disassemble the entire system and create some kind of authoritarian autocracy, dictatorship. And that was even said in the Jubilee episode by one of the fascists of, he doesn't care if it's an oligarchy, theocracy, whatever. Now, that's very interesting, and a lot of the times in these sort of far-right authoritarian movements, you do have different factions of them. There are some people that say there's very little difference between them. There are some ideological differences, though, which usually leads to infighting, and they end up killing each other and stuff. Or pissing the general population off so bad that, Mussolini and his wife happened. The people got so mad at the economic collapse that Mussolini had caused. The people rose up and I think forgot about whatever their political identity was for a moment and just rose up as Italians, and they literally pulled Mussolini and his wife out of their home, hung them up by their feet, and threw bricks and stones at them until they died. You had Idi Amin, he deported, and what he did to the Indian people, to my understanding, he didn't deport them to prisons far away or throw them in prisons or have them tortured or Yeah, I mean, we've already had several people die at the alligator Auschwitz, and I will call it alligator Auschwitz instead of alligator Alcatraz. I don't care. There's already been people who have died there from lack of proper care. Heat strokes, health issues, problems that shouldn't be happening in an American prison or jail system at all. And you have Trump throwing things out there, like talking about turning it into a forced labor camp. And it's like, well, that's the trajectory that Adolf Hitler went down, wasn't it? He started off with the we'll do prisons. Let's do forced labor. We have all these people locked up. Let's have them do forced labor. We'll call them forced labor camps. And then, eventually leads to being a death camp, which American soldiers that went in and opened those camps up to free those people. If you look at interviews of those American soldiers that did that for those camps, for the concentration camps in fascist occupied Germany, or where they had those located, not all of them were in Germany, they're horrified, traumatized by how they saw people, human beings, being treated. Absolutely horrified. So, another point of contention with the censorship thing, the fact that the Republican Party is being taken over by a very, very far-right authoritarianism. One of the most banned books in America right now is The Grapes of Wrath. Like if you tell somebody who's been in the Republican Party who's in their 80s or 90s that they might poop their pants. That's been an American classic for a very, very long time. It's wild that the Grapes of Wrath is something that the Trump regime does not like and has banned and has become America's #1 banned book. Or that there's a picture book about penguins. A picture book about penguins that's been banned as gay porn. And it's not gay porn, but it's banned as gay porn, and it's a picture book of pictures, drawn cartoon pictures of penguins. It's called And Tango Makes Three. Go look at it for your fucking self. I'm tired of doing that shit. I don't want to have these debates anymore. Like if you're not even going to do the research, if you're not going to read the shit, if you're just going to take every citation that's contrary to the confirmation bias that you want and throw it out the window because it's not your confirmation bias, then what's the point? But that's the problem with Jubilee. What's the point? Why are we platforming fascists? Why are we entertaining that as an acceptable role within the Overton window? And then they might say, well, the left has gone really far. The majority, like far left, like communists, anarchists, pure socialism is not popular. It's not. My position is not a popular position. Now, I am old enough to recognize we're not getting revolution now. That's stupid. I'm an adult. I don't have Peter Pan syndrome. And I've had other far leftist anarchists and stuff kind of complain to me about, like, you're an anarchist mentally, but not in practice or something, or in practice, but not something or other. And it's like, there's several issues here. For one, America's not ready for a society that's that far left when we can't even get universal health care here. And literally there's only 2 countries in the world that do not have universal health care at this point. And that's America, and I forget what other country it is, but the reason why the second and only other country doesn't have it is because they're too poor. since America is supposedly one of the more rich or wealthier countries, there's not really a whole lot of reason or excuse not to have it at this point. Other than, it's just Red Scare McCarthyist tactics that have been deep-seated into the minds on the Republican side as the far right just keeps feeding them propaganda and brainwashing them and poisoning their mind, which I think is happening. And I think that propaganda works too well. So it's like the position for universal healthcare is not radical or extreme, and it does not negate free market capitalism. And calling Kamala Harris a Marxist and a far leftist and radical and is crazy, because she's a neoliberal. She's kind of a moderate centrist. She's not far left. She's a moderate centrist. It's like people don't know what this stuff means. They just love to just scream it. The Communist Party in America only has like 140,000 members in it. And what we have, how many billions of people as the American population, and out of I think it's, 3-point-something billion people in America. And out of that 3-point-something billion, only 140,000 belong to the American Communist Party. But I also understand we're not going to get like some kind of far left revolution now kind of thing, because that's just not how our system works. Yeah, another reason why I don't think we can have nice things is when I read articles about, a guy passed another guy on the interstate, so they decided to get in a gunfight with each other. And they end up shooting each other's daughters, sending them to the ICU. One of them died, one of them was paralyzed for life. Like, that's why we can't have nice things. And I'm not saying guns should be taken away. I'm just saying the moral compass, the moral and ethical compass of a lot of people is very weird. Like, out of all the things somebody could do, this person didn't come to you and set your daughter on fire. Like, okay, maybe then I could understand getting into a shootout. They're not trying to rob you. They're not trying to hurt you. This is not in self-defense. This is literally, and the pissed off for what reason? Because they passed you on a highway. And these people are at such a degree, you haven't learned to just let that go, just ignore it. That's emotionally immature, mentally immature, and morally and ethically immature. Like, these are grown adults that have the moral compass of a 5-year-old. Bad news. And you look at education and skills in America, and it's depressing. It's like, wow, this country is falling behind in a lot of ways. Now, I am not being anti-American by pointing that out. What I want is American education to get better. I want the population to be more educated. I want the population to be smarter. I want the population to have more critical thinking skills. But I don't think channels like Jubilee that depend on your, this is the thing, is what they're doing is a bastardization of debate, of logic and critical thinking and philosophy. It's obvious. It's like, the more extreme they go, the more controversial it is, the more clicks they get. Jerry Springer, Coliseum crap. Traditional debate is like the symposium, but they're wanting to take the symposium and drop it in the middle of the Coliseum. And debates are not fights. It's not a battle of the minds. it's more intellectual than that. It's more like playing chess. But not really. It's even more different than that. It's not competitive. Idealistically, in debate, each side states their respective positions. And ideally, the audience knows what deductive reasoning is, inductive reasoning is. They know fallacies, and the audience walks away thinking, okay, well, this person was more persuasive in their argument. They made less inductive reasonings. They made less fallacies, so on and so forth. There's technically no winner or loser in a debate. And this has become a thing on the internet. This is why I'm looking at the debate culture on the internet, and I'm not very happy about it because it's all about ponage. It's not about actual critical thinking. It's not about actually exploring ideas in great depth and detail. And particularly from the right wing, which you can see in the Jubilee and the debate that Charlie Kirk had at Oxford. There's just so many like red herrings, strawman fallacies, begging the questions, and moving the goalpost, and dodging. I mean, tons of fallacies. Jordan Peterson was on Jubilee, and oh my God, what a train wreck that was. I mean, Jordan Peterson was not playing the weak argument always wins, something done by was it Socrates, or was it Aristotle that did the weak argument always wins? Or is it Plato? I don't remember. There's a tactic called the weak argument always wins, where you play stupid. What he was doing was not that, though. What he was doing was just debating semantics. And it gets to a point, like, definitions can be important. It just kind of depends on what's going on in the debate. But when you are literally saying, well, what do you mean by God? Most atheists, most people in general, not just atheists, theists, understand that everyone kind of has their own interpretation as to what God is. So it's very, very difficult to define what God is because it's very subjective. It's very interpersonal, even for apologists, even for theists themselves, even for atheists as they understand what God is to be by thinking about how it's interpreted through the lens and eye view of the theist. But and Andrew Wilson is another one that does this debate of semantics that's crap on top of crap. You're taking you're taking Wittgenstein all the way to such an extraordinary level of making the proclamation that every single word that is coming out of my mouth and out of the other person's mouth is interpreted individually and so subjectively to the point where literally we are just squawking at each other because there is no possible way we could ever communicate with each other. When you sit there and literally ask, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? What does not mean? What does God mean? What do you mean by belief? What do you... You're not playing the weak argument always wins at that point. You are debating semantics. And it's pointless. And it's taken to a level where literally you're just taking the entire English language, the dictionary, and you're throwing it in a trash can and setting it on fire and basically saying, like, there's no possible way we can understand each other because the way that we interpret every single word out of each other's mouth is so subjectively interpreted to a point we can't communicate. There are certain assumptions that we have to make. And that one of those assumptions is that we have a basic understanding of the English language that we both speak. Now, maybe you could debate or bring up definitionally a semantic, something in an argument. Like, for example, when you talk about the difference between tolerance and acceptance, that kind of distinction needs to be made if you are stating a position logically or philosophically. That distinction needs to be made. Does that need to be made in a casual conversation? No. But that distinction probably needs to be made if you're engaged in a logical or philosophical debate or discussion. Otherwise, though, it's just debating semantics, and it's tired, it's old, it's gross, it's stupid, and it's making a mockery out of logic, critical thinking, and philosophy. And one of the reasons I look at the skeptic community that prides itself on understanding logic, critical thinking, and philosophy and does nothing. They do not want to critique these people out of some warped sense of being fair, like, we have to be fair to you have to be fair to people who want to overthrow a democratic political structure, install dictatorships, and murder mass amounts of people just because they don't like them. Why? How is that ethical? And it all, I think, draws back to that, well, I'm scared of being told I'm not advocating for this free speech even if I don't like what they have to say. I'm not asking you to censor them. I'm just saying, why aren't you attacking the bullshit ideas? So Jubilee is platforming these people, giving them a voice, giving them airtime, and that gives them the opportunity to indoctrinate people, and that's terrible. It shouldn't occur. You should not want people exposed to an ideology that pushes them towards extremism. That you're not talking about extremism in the sense of, like, I want everyone to be equal. You're pushing people towards an extremism that leads to massive human right violations, anti-humanitarianism, anti-egalitarianism, anti-representation, and mass murder, needless death, not death that occurs naturally because we live in an imperfect world and people die, death that does not need to occur. It doesn't have to. I don't know how you can become such a hateful, bitter, and jaded person to where you arrive at the conclusion that systemic oppression of groups of people being the direct cause of their death is acceptable. I don't know how one comes to that position. I am not one that puts a price tag on human life either, though. I don't think that can be done. And I also don't support the death penalty. That's me. Overall, though, like, even if I were to support the death penalty, I don't know how you arrive there. Talking about needless death. Like, what did these people do? They existed. And you don't like them. And that's a big difference between tolerance and acceptance, isn't it? Tolerance means maybe you don't like a thing, but you respect its right to be, even though you may not like it. Kind of like me as in with religion. I tolerate religion. I tolerate the theist. I don't care for any religion. I don't care for those things. I don't like them. In fact, internally, I really feel like it's just an excuse for, like, sort of a what's the word? Socially acceptable mass psychosis. That's it. Psychosis. That's how I feel internally. But I respect their right to have beliefs, to have that freedom, regardless of that. That's tolerance. Acceptance is when you're just like, I don't have an issue with it at all. I don't hate it. I actually like it and fully endorse and support. Like, I accept LGBTQ people. How could I not? I am one. So I suppose there are, Rubens out there. That's what I'm going to call them, Rubens, because of Dave Rubin. Gay men who are traitors to the LGBTQ community, I'm going to call them Rubens. And trans women who are traitors to the LGBTQIA plus community, I'm going to call them Blair Whites. But anyway, like, so how do you debate the factions that are held within a democratic political structure with somebody who wants to completely dismantle democracy or democratic political structures? How do you find a middle ground between a Republican and a Democrat who both support democratic political structures with a fascist who wants to completely erode democratic political structures and install a dictatorship? And to the people he's arguing with, basically advocate for the destruction of their friends, family, loved ones, and community. That is not something that I can accept, nor is it something, and I think I speak on behalf of all leftists and even Republicans that are pro republic, pro democracy. That is not something that is tolerable either. You're advocating for needless death. And to put the cherry on top of this Jubilee thing, and fuck Jubilee, because they're doing this, they're basically creating propaganda that brainwashes people, to push people down very, very extreme authoritarian ideologies. I'm boycotting, and I encourage everyone to boycott Jubilee. Do not watch it. Don't watch it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't like, don't click, don't subscribe, don't do any of it. And to no big YouTuber is going to hear this, but if they do, to any big leftist, progressive, liberal YouTuber out there, or somebody who does debates, don't go on that show. Absolutely refuse to do anything with them. They have got to stop platforming legit fascists. But what's really weird, I didn't click on the Mehdi Hasan video. I didn't watch it. I've seen clips of it and reviews of it through other channels. But the other day, I looked at my history, and that video showed up. The one from Jubilee, not the other channels that have been reviewing it. And it said that I had watched it all the way through. And I hadn't. So they got a free view, boost in the algorithm at my expense. What the fuck? Boycott Jubilee. Boycott them. You are not going to get to any reasonable whatever between people spouting bullshit, nonsense, falsehood, conspiracy theories, and people who are trying to tell you objective facts. You are not going to get anywhere other than problems when you're putting people up who think that just because someone is different than them, because they are not white, Christian, male, cis, straight, that they should be destroyed, murdered, killed. That's not a civilized conversation. It's like saying, we should try to have a civilized conversation and try to really understand John Wayne Gacy and, Stalin and fuck it, Idi Amin, and might as well put fuck, this serial killer's name is not coming to me. Ted Bundy. There we go. Do you think you're going to come to any kind of reasonable assertion when it comes to human right violations, murder, and taking somebody's life from these people? It's basically like platforming a serial killer that advocates for serial killing. That's part of living in a free society. You have to tolerate other walks of life that you may not entirely like. There's a difference between tolerance and acceptance. But when you drop, just toss tolerance to the wind, say, I don't tolerate them anymore, they have to be destroyed. We are in an impasse. You cannot reason with somebody like that. They're literally advocating for murder. And why don't they like them? Don't know. It's never made clear. Other than they're just, as it goes from the white supremacist perspective, is because white people are bestest. Well, the evidence on that is not there. There is no objective evidence showing that. So that's their opinion. It's their belief. Even if there was an objective evidence of that, it's quite a leap of logic to jump to the others should die. That's just hate. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to do the video on the stupid girl. I would love to do it because she was very stupid, and I want to make fun of her for doing that. I love these young people. I know everything. I think I know everything until I realize I don't know a thing, and now that I know it, I realize I didn't know when I thought I did. You think you do until you realize you don't, and then you know, and then fun. Anyway, like, share, subscribe, and comment, and hit the bell button, and all that fun stuff, and yeah, whatever. Out.